Howdy out there. So would you like to double your results from selling final expense without having to go into the adult babysitting, also known as recruiting business? If you're interested in learning how to make more money selling final expense without having to recruit, agency build, and do all that stuff, then this video is for you. We're going to teach you some tricks and tips to implement right now to get more out of your sales efforts in the final expense world. My name is David DeFord, owner of DeFord Insurance Group. I train and recruit agents nationally to sell things like final expense, Medicare, and annuities, face-to-face and over the phone. Please make sure to subscribe and hit the like button if you happen to enjoy this content. So let's get started. How to double your final expense production without recruiting. So a couple of things here I'm going to tell you. First of all, I have probably recruited over 2,500 final expense agents in my entire career since 2014. I have a handful of them that are very big six-figure producers that have written 300, 400,000 plus in a year selling exclusively final expense. I have taught all of them my personal strategy that I use to duplicate my production to where I was writing 8 to 10,000 face-to-face selling exclusively final expense. And what I'm going to do here is basically cut through the BS. This whole idea that it's all about recruiting in order to make more money in this business and tell you how to do this from a sales production standpoint. Why am I saying this? Because, first of all, a lot of you don't want to do recruiting. I get it. It is a completely different skill set to be successful building an agency than it is to sell insurance. And if your strength lies in producing and your interest lies in that versus recruiting, then you should learn how to take the steps necessary to build out more production so that you can maximize your return on investment. So let's go ahead and do this. We're going to kind of break this up into getting more out of it and then keeping more. Again, one of the big things here, guys, that you'll hear a lot of in the recruiting space, you're watching videos already. I know you are. I know what videos you guys watch. YouTube's great about telling me. Some of them, not all of them, don't worry. It's not just about making the sale. That's the easy thing to do. The secret is keeping it. And there's some techniques that you need to know, as we'll discuss later on, so make sure you watch the whole video to learn, because that's what's going to really make the difference. There are so many people who come into this business that write a lot of business but are flashes in the pan because they do technically things wrong when it comes to making the sale and virtually nothing to help keep it. So my goal for this is to show you how to scale up your production and on a personal sales basis, but give you those extra added tips so that the business you write sticks and that the money you make stays and doesn't go back into the hands in the form of a chargeback towards the company. So first of all, the first thing you got to do is, I assume right now, those of you watching this, if you're brand new, great, you can keep watching it. If you're experienced, you kind of have a flow. You're writing some kind of business, but you're not happy with where you're at on your personal production basis. So we're looking for ways to get more out of what you got. The best thing you can do right now is scale what works, okay? There is a belief in the marketing world that you've got to have 10 different or a multiple amount of different marketing strategies going on to maximize your efforts entirely. This doesn't work as easily or as cleanly in the final expense world, especially if you're face-to-face. It's hard to drop direct mail in a county when you're doing digital leads over multiple counties and then to work all of them effectively because there's this geographic craziness out of it. So what I like to do with my agents, first step, when I have an agent who wants to make more money and they're doing decent enough, we take what works and simply scale it. Again, what we commonly do at DeFord Insurance Group is for our face-to-face agents, they're doing a direct mail type of lead. For our telesales agent, some sort or variation of a digital lead. There's a couple of different kinds. And we start working it, and when we get success, we just do more of it. We don't change up the lead. We don't change up the vendor. We just double, triple, quadruple even the lead flow. Many times this is over the course of comfort to the agent. They don't just jump right into quadrupling. They usually just build up to it. And then build up their production through the additional influx of leads that they're getting. Because one of the things in final expense, guys, that's wonderful is that what works on a small scale works very similar in the same way on a large scale. So going from, 5 sales to 15 or even 20 sales a week doesn't really look that much different in form of the presentation, the leads, the appointment setting, door knocking script, the presentation script. It's just more of what works. So that's step one. Step number 2 is that you got to start. One of the things that will change in your appointments is your ability and average run length of time for running appointments. I have taught multiple agents to run 12, even 15 appointments a day. It can be done in selling final expense. But one of the things that you have to start doing is look where the excess fat is when it comes to running your appointments. For example, probably one of the best ways to reduce excess appointment time is by reducing your overall rapport building. Now, rapport building is something I personally teach new agents because you can't go wrong with taking an effort to get somebody to like you. People do business with who they like. That's just human behavior. But they also do business with people they trust. They don't necessarily have to like them or love them. But if they have an authority and they're trustworthy, even a little bit of rapport that's 30 seconds in length is enough to establish that. And so as we start to scale up, I ask my agents to really get to the point faster. Cut out the extra talk that's unnecessary. Imagine yourself as being a physician that double and triple books appointments every half hour, and your job is to basically get to the point, forget the bedside manner, and figure out what the problem is, and you're there to solve it. And this kind of direct type of behavior has an impact on prospects. They kind of read and sense that you know what you're talking about. You're a no-nonsense person. People like that. And if you get right down to business and tell them exactly what to expect and how you're going to help them with this level of confidence, they tend to buy from you. So reducing rapport building doesn't necessarily take away from the more experienced agent who is more ready to be direct and confident than the brand new one, which is why we include a lot of rapport building. Also, one of the things I did when I was doing this is I would, as much as possible, work or lead with applications that did not require a phone interview. Anytime you have to do a phone interview, ladies and gentlemen, you're adding another 15 to 30 minutes, bare minimum, to your presentation time. And if you write out of 15 presentations, 6 or 7 apps, 6 times 15 is 90 minutes. So that might be another hour and a half, 2 hours a day devoted to getting an approval. And what if it's declining? You got to pivot to another one. So what I recommend at this stage when we're scaling up is to preferentially use carriers that give instant decisions upon submission. There's a handful of carriers that do this, where you simply complete the electronic application, press submit, and then it gets approved. Those are your carriers you want to write with as much as humanly possible. And in only those situations where you have to do a company with a phone interview is where you want to use those. And again, like I said, guys, this will shave off a ton of time from your day and allow you to write and run and not spend excess time doing things like unnecessary rapport building or unnecessary phone interviews. And then last thing on the list here of getting more out of what you got that's working is to think about things you can outsource. Probably the best thing you can outsource at a highly scaled final expense agent is the act of setting appointments. Now, I think everybody should set their appointments for the most part to start with. But outsourcing appointment setting is something that's not too terribly hard to do. For example, I always had an appointment setter my entire career. And my justification for it was, A, I didn't like being on the phone. I just felt better in front of prospects. And B, it was a small price to pay in exchange for freeing up my time to run more appointments and then spending more time door knocking. Eventually, that evolved in, once I started scaling up, is letting the appointment setter set as many as 30, 40 appointments a week to where I was just so booked that I didn't have time to do anything else. But I could get in front of my prospects doing the thing that earned me the most money, which was selling insurance face-to-face with a qualified person. And the thing is, even if you have somebody setting 30, 40 appointments a week, that's probably an investment of, on average, $500, $600. That might even for some be too high. It might be just right, maybe a little low, but that's not that unreasonable for in exchange of an average commission advance from a final expense policy to have somebody set that many appointments for you. So for me, it just does so much for my business and it frees up so much time that it is one of the best things to consider outsourcing. So where do you find appointment setters? I recommend going to Upwork.com, putting up a job post there, and then interviewing the people and trying to find 3 to 5 people that are good, putting them on a probationary period for a day or two to see how they perform, taking the lame ones out back and figuratively shoot them. I'm not serious. Don't actually kill them. Just get rid of them. And then keep the 1 or 2 even. 2's always better than 1. And have them set appointments for you. Okay? Now, let's talk about keeping more. This talks more when we think about scaling our final expense business is what kind of sales strategies can we use in order to make sure that what we sell stays on the books. And this is critical, guys, because a lot of you are coming into this business and you see a lot of great content out there on YouTube that tells you how much people are making, how many policies are written, and there's a lot of good stuff that's out there. But what you don't hear, what people don't want you to know, is how much business is actually lost in the process of writing it. And this is where it can become scary. I've seen people who have picked the wrong companies that were overpriced, that had inferior products and shady gimmicks, end up having chargebacks in the $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 plus range on one agent. And you owe that money back. It's a terrible thing. And so you want to make sure when you get into this business that you make sure that you set up the sales strategy in a way that overcomes these big gaping hole potentials that could ruin and damage your business. So here's a couple of thoughts here on what you can do to avoid that. Number 1 on the list here is don't push one product. Again, there are agencies out there that push one particular product. They say it's the best thing since sliced bread. And sure, it's helpful and it does get people coverage, but for a lot of the situations, it's just not the best option. And it's easily replaced on price or it's easily replaced on coverage. There's other organizations that pose as brokers and technically are, but they financially incentivize agents to push 1 or 2 products in particular because those agencies have the best relationships with them. It's probably the most financially rewarding relationship for the IMO, and I understand that. But the problem to the agents, the neophytes that come in with no understanding of this, is they're incidentally pushing products that are, yes, that pay them more, but simultaneously expose them to more replacement risk because the prices are higher than others, and if another agent comes by, you'll get replaced. Or they have gimmicks associated with them that, in my opinion, are easy to replace if some other agent comes behind you. And we're in a business model, guys, that more and more people are realizing is extremely attractive and lucrative. And as more competition comes in and you purposely choose these inferior products to sell, you're exposing yourself to more and more risk. Needless to say, why sell something that's not in the best interest of your client, right? So there's that to consider too. So all of this is to say, I don't like a strategy on the final expense sales side where I push 1 or 2 particular products that are in the best interest of myself or the best interest of the agency first and foremost. I think what's in the best interest of me is what's in the best interest of the client. If I can sell my client a competitively priced product that has fantastic underwriting and I can create a great relationship with them, I've done everything possible to give my best to the client, and the likelihood is very high they're going to keep what it is that I sold them. If I'm pushing something that's for my best interest only and not the client's, then the gods of final expense are going to basically level the playing field, and I'm going to find a lot of replacements come my way. So represent multiple companies. What we do at DuFord Insurance Group, we represent approximately 20 different carriers, but new agents start with just 5 of those that represent a good cross-section of price, underwriting, and ease of use. And it gives you really a great opportunity to help your clients without pushing them into something that's inferior, thus greatly reduces the risk of replacement. So make sure that your agency you're joining is going to look at this business like that and not be hot and bothered by 1 or 2 particular products. You're setting yourself up for something very, very dangerous. Number 3, don't push arbitrary face amounts. So this is another thing when we scale up. I think it's not wrong to do this. It's fine, really. It's just another strategy. But I particularly like, instead of saying, here's a 10, 15, 20, pick what works best, I like using some sales psychology in my presentation where I show them why they need more coverage because of inflation. It's kind of a shorthand explanation. And then using what's called the premium sale, or selling the premium, where we start high with a budget, and if the client says no, we work it lower. And what ends up happening is we simultaneously maximize the opportunity to write a large policy while also giving us the opportunity to sell what is easily affordable to the client. Because we do give the client total autonomy to choose what is comfortable financially. And that choice versus arbitrarily pushing a 10, 15, and 20 gives those clients who may not be comfortable spending so much money an opportunity to get a smaller policy, thus keep what it is that they sold or what they bought. And again, in the final expense business, it's not what you sell, it's what you keep. And what you hear on YouTube is about all these people making money, which is true, but then you don't hear what they actually keep. And in the cases where they're not true brokers and they're not representing a multitude of companies and selling the better policies, in my opinion, that are competitively priced and flexible underwriting, you run the risk of being replaced later, of course, which you'll probably never hear about reviewing these videos. So there's my pitch on selling the premium and not pushing arbitrary face amounts. Last point here on keeping more is program your client to decline future replacement attempts. So I made a video a while back where I talked about the efficacy of telling your prospects about your competition. They're going to find out about the competition anyway. They probably already know about the competition. And if you want to focus on in efforts of scaling up your business and keep making more money selling insurance, doubling your production and final expense, you need to make sure you overcome the potential objections of why don't I just pick up a term policy with AARP? Why don't I buy the $9.99 plan from the dude on the Colonial Penn commercials, right? So you need to overcome this stuff. This helps you twofold. Number one, it solidifies a sale because you see how everybody else has a terrible value proposition and why yours is better. And then number two, it just prevents them from even considering going somewhere else. So all of this is to help you, again, add to keeping more of the business that it is that you're selling. And without this strategy, again, like I said, you run the risk of losing business unnecessarily due to, in this case, ignorance. They didn't know how the other competition works. Again, we're lucky in our business. Our products are real good compared to the competitions. And as long as we share that with them confidently, it builds trust in us, first of all, and keeps more of what we sell. So there is my advice, some real from the trenches advice as a final expense producer myself on how to double your income selling final expense. Again, it comes down to this. You got to get more or do more of what works. Scale up what leads work in your business model. Eliminate excess from your presentations. Get down to what the heart of the matter is, solving problems for people who have issues. And then number three, consider, especially if you're a face-to-face agent, of outsourcing the appointment setting so that frees up more time to run more appointments. And then when you make the sale or in efforts to keep what it is that you're selling, make sure that you're also not pushing one arbitrary product or pushing a product that's only good for you and not the best for the client. You're going to get replaced if you do that. Don't push face amounts without consideration of what the client is looking to accomplish or without educating the client on what's necessary. People will buy what they're showed or not buy, and sometimes they'll buy too much because they didn't know there was anything less. Sometimes they won't buy as much as they would have because you've showed them too little as well. So use the sell the premium strategy to get out of that. And then lastly on the list here, tell your clients about your competition. Let them know how terrible they are. In fact, they'll discover and decide for themselves the competition is terrible once you show them the fine print on what all that term and guaranteed issue stuff does. And if you implement all this stuff, all these strategies, all these techniques, you will find there is a great opportunity to double your income in the final expense business without the need or necessity to recruit, to be fully autonomous and not worry about the chargeback risks that come from recruiting or to babysit people who aren't actually going to go work, and focus on yourself and scale up your activity. So I hope this gives you some insight on how to make this business the most that it can be. If you like this kind of content, subscribe and like the video. If you'd like to learn more about joining my agency, there's links above and below. It'll take you to my website we can learn more about what a relationship working with the Ford Insurance Group looks like. And as always, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Y'all take care.